I think a bit more serious would have lended this conversation well, because a lot of conservative viewers are kind of stupid, and so what you need to do is like put on an act for them to make yourself look really cool, calm, and collected, because they care more about like if you have a cool haircut and if you sound smart more than if you're actually saying something that's factually correct. All right, chat, let's run it. Have you all watched this? I haven't watched this yet. I don't know what goes on in this yet, but I would imagine that it could be giga cringe, but we'll see. Apparently Alex said he didn't feel like he did that well in this debate. I'll be the judge of that. We can have low self-esteem. We can criticize ourselves a little too much, but I'll be the judge of that. I haven't seen all of it. All right. Well, let's get into it.
We are told that we are supposed to think a certain way, be a certain way, and if we're not, then we're called all these names like etc.
Not
and
the
worst of all is
N-word.
bootlicker, because I hate when a white liberal tells me as a black man that I'm a bootlicker, because then I ask, whose boot am I licking? Because you're telling me as a white person that me
White
as a
supremacy?
black person that I'm licking your boot because I don't think in this box that you want me to frame my
Well, white
mentality
supremacy
in.
is not
That
about
to me
a
is
single
real
person.
racism, and that's what we need to stop allowing to happen to us, because black people are so
Racism
quick
is
now
when you
to
criticize me?
not branch out and to have new ways of thinking, or to go into careers like agriculture and these other career paths that black people don't typically get into. It's not because
What black people don't get black people don't get into black people, they don't get into agriculture. But it's not about black people not getting into agriculture. Maybe it had something to do with like a lot of that land being passed down to through generations, and I think there would be a lot more black people in agriculture if they had some land, maybe 40 acres possibly. And maybe some livestock too, possibly even a mule. That may have helped black people get into agriculture. If only. That would have been so interesting. Can you only imagine? Oh, I know this country can't. Black people don't get into that whole generational wealth thing, and it kind of blows my mind, listen, being conservative or being liberal has nothing to do with you like farming turnips, okay? I'm going to tell you this. It has nothing to do with you farming turnips. Turnip farmers can have any ideology. And I know you've never, he looks like he has soft hands. I don't know if bro's ever picked up a vegetable out of the ground in his entire life.
Because of racism stopping them from getting in there. It's because we're told for so long that you have to follow this path and you have to think a certain way.
What's the path?
I think America is a great place for a black person. I think I'm an American. Anything that's
She's
available
black?
to you is available to me and mine.
I've personally never experienced white people having way more privileges than me. Like, I'm sure you could find certain institutions where
Light-skinned
black
girl
people
says she doesn't have
treated differently. But in general, I don't think that I've missed out on anything
Says that
because
she's,
of being
treated
black.
like a white
And if
person.
anything, it's given me more of a voice because people will want to hear what I say now because I'm black. So if anything, I have more of a platform now just on the basis of being a black conservative and saying what's not popular than
I would imagine that she's given a lot of platform now because she's a black conservative. Yeah, I would imagine.
Decision to end affirmative action.
I think I'm not going to start. Someone else can start. Sorry.
I think affirmative action has served its purpose. I think that it was necessary for a particular time, and I think that every black person knows how to get into college. Every black, I mean, you could pull out the names, the Oprah, President Obama. You can pull out the head of Time Warner was
Obama
black
exists.
man.
Racism is
black
over.
Man. We know what to do now. We don't need affirmative action anymore. And to me, affirmative action.
Did she think affirmative action had to exist because black people didn't understand how to get into college? They just didn't get it. Black people, well known for just not understanding honestly, they had no clue what college was. Them darkies, they cared too much about bumping in their lowrider and, I don't know, having premarital sex. So that's why they had no clue how to get into college. But, now they do. So that's why affirmative action is no longer needed. This is crazy. Smoking that. What is she smoking?
I think we should do away with all of it. It's just like submit an application, no demographics. Why do they ask your sexuality? Like, why do they ask all that stuff?
I don't know. Probably because they want to give an opportunity to people
action accomplished
who are
its purpose,
less
why do we still see the disparities that we do in the professional workplace? If you average white wealth and compare it to black wealth totals, white people as a whole have about 50 times greater wealth than black people as a whole. per capita. So I just don't understand why you think affirmative action has accomplished its purpose.
But white people just work harder.
Why do you assume that just because there is a disparity means it's because of a racial issue?
What else would it be from?
I mean,
upbringing, economic ability.
I would say here, what else would it be from? Well, because a lot of these studies are standardized for this stuff, and they found like they controlled for these things, and there's still a disparity. Even if you control for everything, there's still a disparity. I mean, it is true. The optics of like overcoming oppression like is bad. It usually is, mostly because the non-oppressed class feel like they're being feel like they're losing something when people that's cool when people who actually need something get it, because they feel like something's been taken away from them. They're so used to being handed everything that equality feels like oppression. So makes sense.
Desire to go, desire to.
I mean, zip code does play a lot. If you grow up in a neighborhood that
desire to go to college. Actually, this is untrue, because black people and black families push their kids to go to college more than white people and white families do.
Experiences a lot of trauma. You're not as likely to do as well in school, which means you're.
Why did they grow up in a neighborhood that experiences a lot of trauma?
I mean, lots of people do.
Yes, but why specifically do more black people?
Sometimes people do.
Government assistance programs.
Government assistance programs, like what?
Try redlining.
I mean, you can go into that if you'd like to, but let's take
we can go into like the actual issue if you want, but I'd like to kind of pretend that that's not real. Okay. All right. I love how you asked. I love how like they're like, why do you just assume that just because there's a problem means it has to be because of race? And you ask them why, like what else it would be. And then they go, well, people sometimes have problems, so okay.
Things ended up changing. It morphed into something else. So what started out as
affirmative action change
of giving all black people or people with a lesser chance or lesser opportunity, it started out as that, and then it morphed. And I'm not sure who morphed it, but it morphed into.
I'm not sure what
so
happened.
now we have to have
but
one
I read
black,
it on Facebook that it
Hispanic,
changed.
One this, one that.
That's not how that works.
But hey, talk to the corporations, talk to the people who hire, talk to the board members who say we need to have a woman on the board, we need to have a black on the board, we need to have a Latina, a Latinx, whatever on the board.
And so it morphed
from helping us into now
tokenization.
Yes. So you have to have one of this, one of that.
Diversity.
Well, when you start with a country where people only hire you if you're white, that's necessary. And I know that you said that it started good and then ended whatever. And I don't think that affirmative action was perfect by any measure. But we still see.
It just doesn't make any sense. They're not saying anything. They're just like, I feel like it changed. How? Why? What? People are talking about it more? Is that how it changed? What sense does this make? What are they even saying?
Really, really bad inequality. So if you're going to get rid of affirmative action, what's the replacement?
Meritocracy.
Is people need to.
There's no meritocracy in this country. You look at Elon Musk. He's destroying Twitter. There's no meritocracy. That's ridiculous.
Well, first thing I want to bounce back to is it's not a myth.
I mean, it's a meritocracy. How in the world does meritocracy exist when nepotism exists? How does the meritocracy? Are you going to make nepotism illegal? Is that how that works? How do you make all of these systems that are contrary to meritocracy work? Are you going do these people disagree with the idea of like monopolies, or like you don't agree with like things like with like the estate tax? So how in the world, if you just give everything to somebody, how in the world does like meritocracy exist? It doesn't make any sense. We don't pay people based on merit. That's not how that works. Listen, capitalism isn't the system in which people get money based on who deserves money. That's not how that works. Capitalism is a system based on who gets, based on the accumulation of wealth and capital, and to be able to use it and exploit it to gain more money. That has nothing to do with merit. That's not what merit means. Do you even know what the word merit means? Because merit means you are deserving of something. Does a CEO deserve to get paid 50,000 times more than their average worker? Do they work 50,000 times harder? They did 50,000 more things? Is that how that works? Because I don't think it is. Like I'm quite sure you know that's not how it is. People aren't paid based on merit. You don't get shit based on merit. Merit doesn't mean anything. I don't even think a lot of these people who say merit even know what the word merit means. They can't define it. Okay.
There are like minorities that are being put into colleges that they're not ready for. If you look at a lot of these top universities, including Harvard, Yale, etc., you're going to see a lot of minorities on academic probation because they are being placed in universities that they are not ready for. They are not cut out for that just yet. And it even just makes sense if you look at how much they have to achieve in order to get there. Asian students on average have to score 450 points higher than a black student in order to get in the same university.
A student who self-identifies as Asian needs in a 140 SAT higher than white, the range of 20. Wait. Let's wait. Use their logic. Wait a second. Use their logic. Why does it have to be based on race? If your average Asian person does, then why is it based on race? Why does this have to be based on race? There's so many other factors that could play into why they need a higher score. Why are you saying it's their race that plays into it, huh? That's so curious.
So if you think of the universities that have courses, etc., that grade on a curve,
what if they're competing with a bunch of other Asian people?
So many people with a B, etc. So that means that the bottom percentile is going to fail. Who is most likely, just based on logic, going to be the ones failing? It's going to be the people who didn't have the credentials to get there in the first place. And then I have to bounce back to
one thing. Nobody gets into Harvard who doesn't deserve to get into Harvard. That's not how that works. But like, they actually think that college admissions is like you pick a random person off the street who's black and then you just put them in Harvard. Like they're picking up like 4-year-olds and putting them in Harvard. That's what your average conservative believes affirmative action is. Because your average conservative, like you can see what conservatives say about things like black doctors and everything. They're like, oh, I don't want to go to a black doctor because black people only have doctorates, only have like MDs because of affirmative action. You're not becoming a doctor because of affirmative action. That's not how that works. You're not getting into a school. You're not like getting into medical school because you're black. You're not getting your medical license because you're black. That's not how that works. Like, you don't understand how any of this works. And honestly, it makes a lot of sense that you're a conservative because you're that stupid. Like, only somebody who's genuinely low IQ would believe something like that. But okay.
Get you on that point, because I would posit that the people who are least likely to have good outcomes in an academic setting are those who have to work 2 jobs, are those who have to drive there from home because they can't afford a dorm, are those who have to go into crippling financial debt. These are and have other stresses in their life. They can't afford a doctor, they can't afford a dentist, they can't afford anything.
I had to do that too, though.
Those are the people.
This is a really great point. Actually, from Alec, is that your academic attainment actually goes down the more things that you have to do. Most people that drop out of most people who drop out of college and have problems in school have to do things like work multiple jobs, have to help family members, things along those lines, who have less means. The more things that you have to worry about and pay for without having it paid for by mommy and daddy are the people who have the most amount of issues, because they don't have somebody to just completely lean on. They don't have a home to always go back to if they can't pay for their dorm. They don't have somebody who will just like open their door for them all the time. Their family doesn't have as many connections. And yes, dumbass, you may have had to work 2 jobs too. Congratulations. Good for you. We're not talking about individuals right now. We're talking about people, and we're talking about groups. So, I mean, cool. Nobody asked. I wish, honestly, if I was there, I would have been like, cool, nobody asked. Just like, okay. I don't know. I'd be like, do you think only black people work 2 jobs? Oh, of course not. What are you, stupid?
They can't afford a doctor, they can't afford a dentist, they can't afford anything.
I had to do that too, though.
Those are
That's not just black people. It's not
okay,
just...
nobody
asked.
We're looking at
Overwhelmingly,
straight numbers. There are more white people in poverty than black people.
There are more white people in America than black people?
Wrong numbers.
Yeah.
No
The issue
number
is
is
poverty
wrong.
in general, though. I don't think it's like who's in poverty. It's like poverty.
I think there are more white people in poverty than there are black people in America. I don't know, man. Black people must reach 120% of their potential of their potential poverty. Like, what does that even mean? Percentages, dude. They don't listen. Okay, I hate to say it. It makes a lot of the black conservatives here. I don't know. Has anyone here passed the statistics course? Has anybody on the black conservative side passed the statistics course? Because if they haven't, honestly, it's making itself known right now. Because I see it. This is like the type of joke that people make to clown on black conservatives about. They're actually the meme.
Maybe we should make college free. And maybe we want to have affirmative action wouldn't be that necessary.
And it'll get even more ghetto.
Why is that?
If you have a program that says if you are under a certain income level, this is how we'll help you.
Air quote liberal lady there. She's just conservative.
At a far greater percentage than it will help white people.
Alex been doing a great job so far.
Lives.
No. Trump loves black people.
I think that
Now let's see what Alec has to say.
I think that President Trump supports all lives. I think that he looks at all American citizens as equal. I don't see him doing anything that would make you feel like he does not support Black lives. That's of course going to lead into the conversation of Black Lives Matter, which was a movement and an organization with so much corruption. Donald Trump not supporting that organization doesn't mean that he doesn't support Black lives. It just means that he doesn't support
the
organization that's stealing so much money from so many people to do absolutely nothing with it. Nor does he support a destructive movement that is destroying cities, communities, lives, etc. So I don't see why someone would think that President Trump doesn't support Black lives.
I've heard him say he knows all the best black people. He has all the best black friends. I do support black people all the time. So sorry, that was a very bad impression, but I don't think Donald Trump wants bad things to happen to black people. So in that respect, I think he does support Black lives.
I remember the
other
Central
side of
Park
that is he's not
5
really
thing
doing
and being
anything. He didn't do
sued
anything
for
as
not
president,
renting out to
certainly,
black people.
The economy affects black people.
Yeah, I certainly disagree with that point. One of the biggest things I
What does he do for the
supported
economy?
personally, well, yeah, we'll get into that one later. One of the biggest things he did is he secured permanent funding for HBCUs, one of the largest increases we ever saw for HBCUs, personally done by his administration, among many other things. The First Step Act, which, you know, there's a lot of debate about whether it...
I mean, the Trump administration did support some HBCUs with the Future Act. Legislation made permanent $255 million in annual STEM funding for minority-serving colleges, including roughly $85 million specifically allocated to HBCUs. Yeah. While many of the nation's 110 HBCUs face financial pressure and funding, and a funding stream is important to them, it isn't responsible for keeping their doors open. Yeah, like he gave money to HBCUs. Cool. I don't know that I think like every administration has given money to HBCUs. What is HBCUs? HBCUs are historically black colleges and universities. Well, the name is pretty self-evident, basically. So I mean, cool, good, I guess. But the thing is, like, okay, his record with HBCUs isn't some sort of like great, amazing thing that this Chandler kid's going to try to make it sound like it is. Under Trump, each year, Trump proposed bigger and bigger tax cuts for schools, for education, specifically in the scientific sector. And some of those suggested cuts, such as the 2018 White House proposal to restructure and slash trio programs by 40%, which would have disproportionately affected HBCU students. Trump would have sought to eliminate the strengthening historical black colleges program. Trump tried to eliminate the strengthen historically black colleges program. Okay. All right. Congress has ignored virtually all the Trump's administration's proposed cuts to higher education. TRIO programs, for example, which featured outreach and student services aimed at low-income and first-generational students, have seen budget increases each year. The administration's rhetoric has also had times that angered students, faculty members at HBCUs. Okay. All right. So just so you know, there's some context to what Donald Trump said. If I remember correctly, the HBCU bill was inside of a much larger bill. That was just one thing that was a part of it. But cool, I guess.
It was really the best thing to do, but that was definitely a kiss of love to the black race. Freeing Alice Johnson for menial drug crimes she committed in the past that had her locked up. She did not get to see her family for years.
Yeah, but that's not like
he pardoned one lady.
But I agree in the sense that
He
Donald
did his
Trump
job
doesn't
and
literally
pardoned
want bad
one
things to
lady.
happen to black
Donald
people,
Trump
like I think a
loves
lot of
the
conservatives
blacks.
do. So I think that he just says the most yeah, I do think that. I think he says the things that will get him elected. So I don't think that he has any personal grudges against certain, most people. He just says the most popular thing. So I think like Ron DeSantis would be somebody that I think actually wants black people to be hurt. So by that standard, yeah, Donald Trump supports Black lives by leaps and bounds.
You think Donald Trump says the most popular thing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Then why do so many people hate him?
My people will never be free. Smartest black conservative. Okay. Smartest black conservative. Oh, he says popular things. Well then, why do people not like him? Okay. I don't know, maybe because he's a politician? Maybe, possibly. That could be one thing about it, I guess. This is the most popular thing to conservatives, yeah.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He didn't win the popular vote. Neither time.
That's a liberal talking point. That's a liberal talking
I'm
point.
helping you here. I'm trying to see the logic in this. Obviously, he says things to be elected as a politician very similarly to how Joe Biden did, except Joe Biden actually has a history of racism.
If he said things that people didn't like,
Trump
he
doesn't have a history.
been our president.
Never mind. I forgot. This guy is actually really stupid. We looked into him before.
I love a lot of the things he says. I think he's hilarious.
He simply
When he
just
said,
lies.
Big water. That was one of my favorite quotes. Big water.
Water, big water, ocean water.
Oh my gosh, he got an edit out of that?
He has the funniest one-liners, so I love a lot of the things he says. As far as policy, he sucks, but...
I'm just shocked you're wearing a Hunter Biden hat. He likes a different kind of one line.
Oh, I know, conservatives love talking about his
No, Coke. It's different. Coke, not
Well, address the Central Park 5. That's what you brought up, right? Yes. How do you feel about that?
Well,
he took
actually,
a full page out after they were exonerated.
so I haven't
He wanted them
dealt-
to be killed,
well,
executed, just because they were black.
That story.
And he bars people from attending his businesses or like renting apartments from all his like stupid Trump towers. I
think Trump at that point was, like many people in this room, particularly liberals, a victim of the media. I think he was scared. I think he was ashamed of the things that he heard in the news and wanted to take action himself as a businessman, not as a racist.
Why are you infantilizing him?
I don't like also real quick because
listen, he was a baby. He had no clue. He was scared of the blacks.
From Biden. That crime bill. This was at the height of like violent crime and the crack epidemic in the United States. The Congressional Black Caucus supported that crime bill. Everybody in the United States supported that crime bill. The idea that that crime bill was like some racist piece of legislation that Biden was just wheeling out because he hates black people, and that's somehow comparable to the Donald Trump's treatment of the Central Park 5 that were already exonerated. That wasn't a victim of the media. The media said they were done. They were exonerated in court. They weren't there.
As I understand it, the prosecutor of the 5, he was a black guy, and so being a black guy, he went and he looked at all the evidence and said these guys are guilty.
Black people can also be racist against other black people.
Or just make mistakes.
So if anybody does anything you disagree with in regards to the Central Park 5, even if they themselves are a black person, then
if they do racist things, they're racist.
They're just a racist black person.
If they disagree with me, they're racist.
That prosecutor was doing his job.
That's my policy. If they disagree with me, they're racist.
I
think Trump has shown a history of ignorant at best and racist at worst behavior. I didn't vote for him or Hillary because I just don't see him as a conservative hero. I don't even think he's a conservative.
Fake conservative. I voted Trump in 2016, just so you all know. So I'm just saying.
So I need to I need you to elaborate on if people disagree with you, they're racist, just in general.
I was just kidding.
He's just
it's called a meme.
Sorry if I triggered you. I'm sorry.
You made a point. You made a point a couple of minutes back where you said he just kind of says these things to rile up his base. Why does he need to do that at the expense of black people then?
He doesn't do that at the. I am a member of his base, and I'm sitting there like, oh man, this is amazing. And I don't know, you can call me self-loathing, you can call me self-hating,
so you're saying calling for the public execution of 5 black men that were exonerated to rile up his base.
When has he done that during the campaign trail? He didn't do that.
He did
everything in New York.
It's everything.
Listen, the Central Park 5
comments about Muslims, the comments about Mexican immigrants.
Why does never about Mexican immigrants, never about Muslims, about terrorists and about criminals and rapists. These are very important.
So what, did he do a terrorist ban or a Muslim ban? Did he ban terrorists or did he ban Muslims? Which one do you think it is? When he said, I'm doing a Muslim ban to ban Muslims, I don't want any more Muslims. We're shutting down Muslims from coming into the country until we figure out what's going on. Do you think that he meant Muslims or terrorists? And honestly, whatever answer that you do to that, it's racist. Because no matter what it is, it's racist. Because if you're saying, oh, he actually meant terrorists when he said Muslims, he's racist because he's saying that Muslims are just terrorists. And if you're saying he did a Muslim ban, then he's racist because he's banning Muslims because he thinks they're terrorists. So which one is it, Chandler? I'd like to know. The people are waiting.
Delineations to make, and if you believe
I
that
think
when
you
fed
understand,
the media about, oh, it's all Mexican immigrants, I think it's more of you being, oh man, these poor Mexicans, they need to be supported. It's more of that savior complex.
Reparations are necessary.
When we talk about reparations, I think that doing reparations in the way that a lot of people think of it, where we just give it to black people, I'm not an expert on this, but I think it would be more income-based, and that in itself, like I said earlier, would disproportionately benefit black people, because if you recognize that they are disproportionately affected by a systemic injustice, then doing it on like a class level would uplift proportionally more black people than white people or any other race.
Yeah, I think like mostly like black GIs that were left out of like the New Deal, for instance. That
good meme, Jacob.
To be able to
they should give Jacob more talking
time. As a white American, as a white veteran, to get a home loan and then build that generational wealth. You could not get that as a black American. So there needs to be, I think, reparations. I don't care really what form it comes from. I think free healthcare, free college, so that everyone has like an equal opportunity to educate themselves, to build a better life for themselves. So it's sort of like
I will just say, I do find it incredibly funny that the apparently air quote white liberal girl who grew up in the N-word husband, you can't say that, wife, a household, it does not support like any of these questions that are supposed to be like pro black people's suffrage. All I'm saying is that it's just super curious. I'm not saying anything else.
And I think Germany is also a perfect model to follow.
Germany
issuing, first of all, a formal apology, which we haven't even done that.
I'm not sure if you guys know this, but if you ever go to Israel, you'll see a lot of BMWs. The reason is because Germany helped pay for the reparations to the state of Israel.
Reparations
by giving things like cars to
I have
Israelis,
no problems with reparations,
and they also finished paying off the reparations in 2009.
The, like slavery or the civil rights movement or any of that, but to try and do that now logistically, it just doesn't really make any sense. And like, where would this money come from? Like, we're in so much debt as a nation. Would I get this money? I'm biracial or triracial. Like, do mixed people get it? And like, do Irish people get reparations when they were indentured servants?
$5 that you put in your right pocket.
Specific instances of somebody being like actually deprived of something, whether specific instances of like the 40 acres and a meal promise, or whether you can find specific cases of like Chinese people building railroads, or Irish people, whatever, people being deprived of things, that's okay. But otherwise, yeah, it's a logistical nightmare. There's no possible way that we'd be able to do it well.
Yeah, America's unique because we have bent over backwards for decades.
Okay, well, but that's like a different question about whether or not it's necessary. Whether or not it's feasible or whether or not it's easy is a different question about whether or not it's necessary. You can think it's feasible, you can think that it's infeasible, and you can think that it's difficult, and you think it could be a logistical nightmare. But saying that it's now but saying that because of that it's unnecessary, that's a completely different thing, right? I understand why he did that, but that's like it feels like a different question to me. It's completely feasible. It's really difficult, actually. Like, it depends on what you mean by reparations, right? Well, like, I'm doing a Jordan Peterson. What do you mean by right? What do you mean by reparations? If you just mean like money, then I'm not like super for reparations, mostly because all the wealth is going to get sucked out of those communities because they haven't had any opportunity to build wealth and build structure, so money actually circulates inside of the community instead of it just like getting sucked out to white businesses that have had that have had hundreds of years to be able to set up and establish themselves in society based on society that's only for their interests, right? But if it's like right? And like, how do you, right? So it's, for one, it's like, what does reparations mean? And then it's, how do you get it to people too? Like, is it self-identified black? Is it based on skin tone and self-identification? Is it based on history? Like, how in the world do you figure out the history? Does everybody take like a genealogy test and figure out, and they have to be of like 50% like sub-Saharan African descent, right? But then there are like Jamaican people as well who were sold from Jamaica to America, so they wouldn't really have African descent. Like, it's really difficult to be able to figure out what necessarily that means, whether or not like it should be done, and whether or not it like can be done, right? It are two different things. But then you could also say like, we can implement a system that gets most people, and that would be nice, because I don't know, getting like 60, 70, 80, 90% of people is better than getting, 0% of them, which I think is great. If it was done on class lines and not race, I mean, I think probably the most feasible one to do would be done on class lines. I mean, if that's the case, then you would just be doing kind of like reverse redlining, which I don't think is necessarily like a bad thing. Like, reverse redlining sounds kind of cool. Like, a lot of black people have already been redlined, and they've been in those communities since forever, honestly, since redlining, since the end of slavery. It'd be pretty easy. Greenlining. So true. So true. True and real. Real and factual. Factual and correct. That's the hottest meme that's ever come out of this chat. Greenlining goes crazy. Wait a second. Maybe we should be greenlining. Trademark that. Write that down. 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 Greenlining goes crazy. I mean, yeah, you could do it based on neighborhoods, right? You can do it based on like majority black neighborhoods. That's something that you can do. And then somebody would be like, oh, what about like the poor white people? Well, help the poor white people too. But then the poor black people would get like an extra boost because, the history of black people in the country. Unless you just want to pretend that doesn't exist. But if that's the case, I don't know why we're having this conversation, right? Roy. Thank you so much. Yeah, greenlining could be, yeah, you can do that too. And would you get every single black person? No, absolutely not. And would all those black people still deserve it? That wouldn't be a part of the program? Yes, absolutely. But you'd get most of it done. It's not possible to get like literally every single person. Literally not every single person who, could get a check from the government. Like, every single American was offered a check from the government when they were doing those government check. I forgot the stimulus checks, but not everybody got one. So would we say that we can't do stimulus checks because not everybody would get one? Well, I don't think so, personally. That's just me though, right? Roy, yeah, maybe some greenlining. That'd be cool. But at the end of the day, that would just be investing in majority black neighborhoods, and in that case, I guess it would be greenlining. I guess it would be reparations, but it wouldn't be exactly how people would imagine it. But I think it would still classify as reparations to some degree. I mean, I guess like if anything good came out of redlining, it's that it's easy to find black people now. I guess. So yeah, there's that. Also issued an official apology for the oopsie. We did have an official government oopsie for slavery.
Decades now, putting minorities in a position of privilege. I feel like we have done so much to give back to the communities that were obviously wronged. And I agree with both of you. Like, had this happened a long time ago, I would understand it. If we had specific incidences that we could trace where people were just completely screwed over, I would respect it. But right now, I don't deserve a payment for something my great-great-great-great-grandparents went through. And I don't think that white people are responsible for paying that to me either.
I know we don't want to use
the government pays for it, not just white
but it's sort of like
people.
a bribe for a vote in a way, at least in my opinion. In states like
Joe Biden wouldn't go to every white hole's house and be like, pay up, Jack.
Every black citizen
the Negroes need
in the state. It's like, are you serious? Because this is kind of like a joke, in my opinion.
I think that if we impose reparations now, I think it would rip America apart. I think that we're already separated enough as it is, and now you're going to have people walking around going, "You owe me money. You owe me money. I'm not paying you any money." It would just really rip us apart.
Wait. All right. Yeah, the black conservatives are simply just stupid. They actually, okay, reparations is when gangs of black people, gangs specifically, not even gaggles, walk up to white people and they go, "Hey yo, where's my money, dog? I need the money right now. Put it in my pocket right now, dog." And the white people go, "No, don't do that to me, feller. No, I can't. I didn't do anything. I've never heard of black in my life. I love the black. I drink my coffee black. No, give me the money, Whitey." That's what she actually thinks reparations is. How like you, apparently reparations is race war, where black people then just like, I don't know, the black people, the government gives every dark-skinned person in the country telekinesis, but the telekinesis only works on wallet. It's actually wallet manipulation. Every single black person in the country gets wallet manipulation, and only on white people. So when white people walk around with their wallets in their back pocket, then black people can go and then like pull the wallet out of their back pocket. And they're like, "Thanks for the money, Whitey." And then they like skedaddle off. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what reparations is to your average black conservative, apparently. Financial vampirism. The reparations is when white people have to sacrifice their firstborn to black people and turn their child into money, just a pile of money, and then give it to black people. But instead of it being like a dead president on the bill, it's like the face of the dead child, like banging on on the dollar, like let me out, let me out. It's very sad. That's what reparations is. You must sacrifice your firstborn son.
White liberals have a savior complex.
Neoliberal. Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. But
well, I gotta say, this is a shock. I never expected all four of you to just come forward and admit it, but you know what? I'm happy with these results.
I just think it's a lot of people, I guess, people, you know, of the left, whatever, can kind of fall into that trap of thinking that, you know, black people as a monolith need to be saved as a whole.
I have no shame about it. I have a savior complex as an older brother, and I will save you whether you like it or not. So that's just me.
Well, it's definitely not, because a lot of us are really just exhausted of being.
Listen, I get what he was going for here, but listen, I get what he was going for here, but savior complex is actually a very specific term. And I don't even well, I'm not sure. Is he memeing? I'm not sure. But savior complex is a very specific term. I think he knows that. I'm not sure. He is. He's just memeing. Okay. Weird. I wouldn't say it's weird. I know the joke he's going for. I just get it. I would just say that this would look bad, mostly because the people who would understand necessarily what a savior complex is, especially in the discussion of like black people and emancipation and like anti-white supremacy, it's just like it's just hard to make a joke like that work. So even I was confused. I went in knowing that he apparently made jokes and like apparently they didn't all land. But even I am like, even I just didn't get that one. Well, I got it, but it was like I had to think about it for a second, and it's confusing if you want to be like, oh well, specifically white savior complex is like is different in the form of like bigotry as well, especially bigotry of low expectations. It plays into that as well, right? I get it. A lot of this comment section is filled with a bunch of conservatives. Somebody's like, "Alec, take a deep breath. Chandler, I am breathing, but a lot of babies aren't." Fire emoji, fire emoji, fire emoji, fire emoji. Okay. Yeah, sounds about right. Imagine being so intelligent in debating like Destiny only to have someone like Alec on your team. Oh, is this? I don't know. I mean, I can easily see this comment section filled with a lot of like Destiny fans who hate Alec and like the conservative commentators here who have a bunch of people here who also hate Alec. And so like those two communities are both like helping each other shit on Alec. Okay. Yeah, no, I think he did a pretty good job based on everything that I've seen. I don't know. Let's watch the rest of this
color, because when you have this mindset that you need to save Black people and we're just sitting here minding our own business and living our lives the way we want to, I don't know why it is that people feel this immense pressure to be so apologetic and just always trying to cater and coddle to Black people when we just want to be treated like everybody else. We're equal for a reason.
I think especially recently with a lot of riot stuff that's gone on or protest stuff that's gone on, people on the left tend to infantilize a lot of different types of protesters, and especially even talking to, some of the other Black content creators I do content with, when you hear a lot of progressives come out and say, well, they don't have a choice but to riot or break into this store, or, well, they're stealing, these electronics or shoes for good reasons, you just don't realize it. I think a lot of people kind of look both ways, and it's a little bit weird that there's such a complex on the left to excuse like every single possible negative behavior from somebody, as long as they're a skin color that you're kind of in charge of protecting.
I find that very offensive.
Yeah.
I find it
really
extremely, it upsets me to hear that, because we're just like you. We just have a different skin color, and to hear that you have to help me is offensive to me. I can do it on my own.
Well, we have to break down sometimes why these riots happen. MLK once said that
I wouldn't go with this point. I would say, you could hear what I would say personally. Like, I understand the point that he's making, but when it comes to these types of things, you have to be careful. Somebody can say something really stupid, and it may be good to just not say anything and just kind of let it hang, or pick one thing to hop onto. I wouldn't really hop onto the rioting point, if I'm going to be honest. I would, because I think most people are going to be like, yeah, sure, rioting's bad, I guess. But I think you have to pick your battles. That's like the one thing that I would think for Alec that he could take away from this is maybe try to be a bit less jokey. I can see how he can come off poorly. I can see how he can come off poorly here in this discussion. Some of his jokes didn't land. He was there with like the Trump cares about Black people thing, and then he was like, "Oh, I was wrong," right? It just made him look like he wasn't paying attention. He was aloof. He just didn't know what was going on, right? And I get it, sure, right? But like I think the biggest thing would be like picking your battles there. I would, instead of hopping onto the riot one, because it's a really difficult one to even try to discuss, I would just be like, sure, rioting's bad, but like if you don't want riots, you should figure out what's leading. You just figure out what's like leading to them and what's leading to these like protests in the first place, and also leading to these protests in the first place. And is it really the rioter? Is it always like the rioter's fault? Or is it more, or is our like what role do police play in this? And there's a lot of like different things that you can go there, but it's difficult to touch on that one. I would probably go with the much easier one with like the savior complex and everything, and just be like, yeah, like the savior complex is bad, and just saying, and obviously bigotry of low expectations is a real thing, but while understanding that and being grounded in that knowledge, we should still understand that some disenfranchised communities still need help, and a lot of Black people are a part of a lot of disenfranchised communities, and they need help. They don't need to be saved. They need help, and the government's job, as per the Constitution that makes up the government, that structures the government's role, as per the preamble, promote the general welfare. That's what it's for. That means help people. Help. It's helping people help themselves, right? And so that's basically it. We're not giving people things. We're not giving people just stuff. We're giving people opportunities. And sometimes an opportunity comes in the form of giving someone a thing that can help them help themselves. But that's how it works. Yeah, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, right? And so that's where I would take that. And so because these conservatives conflate people wanting to help Black people and disenfranchised communities with infantilism and like thinking all Black people are stupid babies who can't do anything, so they have to do it themselves. But it doesn't make any sense, right? I would stick on that point. That'd be the easier point to tackle there, because like obviously all conservatives, because obviously all the conservatives on this panel are incredibly low IQ and are going to be like, well, like during the George Floyd riots, 35 cities across the country completely were razed to the ground. They no longer exist anymore. Like if you show a conservative a picture of like Hiroshima and Nagasaki after like the nuclear bombs during 2021, and you told them that that's what Chicago and New York look like, they'd believe you. Like it's just like you can only go so far with some of these people, right? So I wouldn't touch on that talking, but there's so many different little angles that they can go through. All of them would have their little talking point. Like I remember I saw this one guy do this bad thing, and like, sure, bad things are bad, okay.
Riots are the voice of the unheard. So if you are to address the problem and stop the riots, you have to address the underlying inequality that has historically been pervasive. You know, even if you as individual people are doing fine and you don't want anybody else to get in the way of that, that's cool, and I'm not going to be the one to get in the way. But the disparities are.
Oh, also, I don't know, man. Also proof that, like, I don't know. I may not take all those comments for being really the audience. Most of the audience is in agreement with Alec on most of the things that he was there for, right? Remember they had like polls for every question on who agrees. It was like 60% for like the right answer almost every single time, if I remember all of them correctly. So I don't know. I guess he could have made some of his points better, but the points in general were all fine. It's just choosing which battles you take, and I don't know. I guess being better at comedy or just being a bit more serious. I think a bit more serious would have lended this conversation well, because a lot of conservative viewers are kind of stupid, and so what you need to do is like put on an act for them to make yourself look really cool, calm, and collected, because they care more about like if you have a cool haircut and if you sound smart more than if you're actually saying something that's factually correct. So to like look better in this conversation, you would have to be like super prim and proper or whatever, because that's what they more care about than anything else. You have to look strong. I mean, these people vote for Donald Trump, right? Like, who's an actual child. So I don't know, like you have to be careful here. It just depends on the audience, right? Yeah, like I think any rational human being heard that like meritocracy comment and is like, okay, all right, buddy. I think probably bring up Elon Musk may not have been like the best choice either, but I think mostly it was just mostly fine.
Undeniable. So if you take pride in having like a white savior complex, what is it that you think that you're doing to save black people, and what is it that you think that you're saving black people from?
I am trying to make the world a better place through whatever means I can,
but you're doing it on the backs of us.
Oh, okay. So that was okay. So it was kind of a joke, but kind of not really as well. All right, interesting. If that was the answer, I would just say, he may need to look into what white savior complex specifically is if he doesn't know already. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's the only point I really disagree with him on, necessarily.
I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, I actually do. I feel like you want to be a savior and you're using me to make yourself feel good. That's what I'm hearing.
How am I hurting you?
You're not letting me have my own voice. You're not letting me speak.
How? You're speaking now?
No,
you're cutting her off.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I have to.
Yeah. Well, what's happening? I mean, you're speaking right now. You're speaking right now in this particular setting. Mm-hmm. But what you're saying is,
okay.
You're.
All right. I see. Yeah, I see the optics of this.
You took it back to riots and so forth, and it makes it seem like the only way that we as black people can voice
have a voice here
is by riots, and then you need to come along and you need to say, okay, poor little black child, let me help you. That's offensive to me, and I feel like you're making yourself feel
here's the
good.
Thing. Here's the reality of the situation.
Help
you have to treat.
I also think that like when we talk about damage, I think especially when it comes to a lot of the shoplifting stuff that's going on.
I hate to say it, but like you have to treat conservatives like children. Black conservatives are no different. So you have to give them the leeway to like cry a lot. Cause like all of that was just simply really crying. And if you don't, then they'll try to make you look bad for like talking over them, especially black conservatives. They'll try and race bait you really hard and be like, You're not letting me speak. Like they'll be like, oh yeah, racism, it's like basically gone. But then they'll be like, but like real racism is when a white liberal tells me that I'm incorrect about the terrible things I believe about black people. So you really got, I think his biggest problem here is not like treating them. You have to, if you're somebody who's taken care of children before, then I think you're honestly, I can't lie to you, genuinely have a head start on things like talking to a conservative. Honestly, because the same tactics that children will use to like get them to give you a cookie, get you to give them a cookie, is the same tactic that conservatives will use to be able to get you to believe their talking points. Yeah, real racism is redlining basically doesn't exist. Real racism is when you're like mean to me about my shitty political views. If I'm going to be honest. He treated like adults instead of children. That was his downfall. I can't lie. He's right. You're actually right. He treated them like adults and not children. And that's why he really looks bad. He'll look bad to people in this conversation. The truest criticism so far. Yeah, totally. I think Destiny even talked about this really recently, and it was super interesting. You really have to treat them with like super kid gloves and coddle them super hard. The things that these people believe is just completely divorced from reality, and to treat them with any sort of to treat them like on the same level as like a functional adult will only lead them to get angry at you. So you have to be super patient and super slow and like repeat, super patient and really slow and be like, you can go on this tangent, but once you're done, I'm going to ask this question again. Okay, I'm going to ask you this question again. You have to do that like over and over and over again, because like otherwise you just can't, they just won't listen. Anyways.
In certain cities, you get a lot of white people that live in nice suburbs saying things like shoplifting is no big deal, that's fine, and then you'll catch YouTube videos of them later on being in a Walgreens in like a shoddy neighborhood, and they're like, man, why is the deodorant behind a locked case? It's very easy to sit behind a gated community and say, oh, well, it's not a big deal, they steal because they have to. Riots are the language of the unheard. I think people haven't read the full context of that quote. When MLK was saying riots were the language of the unheard and you need to address the underlying condition, he wasn't condoning the rioting, he was just understanding it.
Obviously, there are a bunch of white people that feel they need to be a savior, but I think there's a difference between helping and saving. Like, I don't think I would need to save black people, but I would tremendously love to help.
Oh my goodness, this is such a good, thank you,
sure
Jacob.
Everyone has like equal outcome, or not equal outcome, but at least equal opportunity, which in my opinion, I feel we do not have in this country.
Great point.
This is awkward. Hi, guys. So I didn't step forward just because I don't want to broad brush all white liberals as having a white savior complex. I have experienced white liberals who do have that, and they're very unpleasant people. But I don't think every single white person who's a liberal or who is an activist for BLM or any of those things necessarily has a white savior complex. I think that there's a lot of white people who genuinely think that black people are oppressed and they want to help, and that's what they're told.
What it seems like to me, when most people have savior complex, regardless of whom they're trying to save, it's like they're taking real pain.
What did Ali get banned from Hassan's chat over this or something? Like, what happened?
Push this political agenda, but also to alleviate themselves of
was he like, stupid Alec, you make me look bad?
Like, I don't know why a white person today would feel guilty for things that happened decades ago, let alone something that happened centuries ago.
I've never seen a white person say, I personally feel guilty for slavery. Maybe they're out there, but I've never heard that.
Yeah, in second grade, when they taught us about slavery, almost every kid in my classroom would spend their entire time looking at black kids in that classroom. Whoa. How was I supposed to not think,
because
wow,
it's
these people
awkward?
are feeling guilty for something that they have no involvement in and I have no
Every kid in my classroom understood the context.
People hate feeling uncomfortable, and obviously you don't want to feel like the bad guy, and so I feel like it comes from a place of like, oh, well, like, let me make sure that I'm different and like I'm showing you that I want to like help you, but it comes
I don't
across,
know,
like,
raping, torturing, and talking about raped, tortured, and murdered human beings of a specific race,
when you put
and people of
yourself
that
as the
specific
white
race
savior,
are right
what
next
you
to you
do
while
is
it's
you
happening
elevate
sounds
yourself
awkward,
above
don't
the
it?
black person, because you feel then like you have to.
I don't know, if I was in like a civics class and we were talking about how American companies paid like child abductors and like murderers and low caste systems in India for skeletons used for like medical classes, and there were like a bunch of Indian kids in my class, I'd feel a little awkward too, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. But it's not because I feel guilty for what happened to them personally. I feel bad for what happened to them, and I may feel guilty for what happened to them on like a country level. Like I feel bad my country did this to them, or like people in my country did this to them. It's like tougher to call yourself an American when the flag is soaked in blood, but I think that's just being a normal human being with like normal human emotions, and not like a weird savior who hates them or something, you know? That's just me though. I think it's okay to have normal human emotions, but that's just me though, I guess. I guess that what makes me different than your average conservative chud. I don't know. I honestly think Alec did okay. I think we talked about most of the things that I think were a problem. Obviously, the conservatives on the panel had an absolutely horrible, abysmal, I got mine, fuck you showing, but that's like average for your average, like a conservative, so that's not surprising. I think the Jacob guy did a great job. I think he did a pretty good job, actually. He did a great job. Destiny just did his Destiny thing, so there's nothing really to speak on there. He just did exactly what I expected him to do.
Oh, sorry. I didn't see you there. If you're enjoying the content, hit the subscribe button. If you don't, it'll make Boo very sad. I know a bunch of you who are watching are not subscribed. Join the frenzy. You won't regret it.
Thank you, Boo.